you going to tell everyone that we met on Instagram in like 2012 and like became best friends in like a day?
Hey team, and welcome to episode 3 of Jeans and a Nice Top podcast. Today we are blessed with the wonderful presence of the real life earth angel Georgina Mariee, which she is also known as on Instagram. She is a yoga teacher, writer, nutritionist and fitness coach, and the conversation we're having this week is really important to both of us, especially after the recent news of Nikki Graham and her death due to anorexia. I just wanted to put in a trigger warning to let you know that we do talk about eating disorders, recovery, past and present. It is overall a positive outlook, and I want it to be something that enlightens and educates rather than triggers or offer tools, I guess, so to speak. The aim of this episode is to offer an honest, truthful, but hopefully inspirational and motivational perspective on mental health and specifically eating disorder recovery and how to go all in and truly do the work to live an abundant and happy life. I hope this inspires you. I hope it just offers a little bit of an insight to those that might not understand the reality of it, and just to talk about the afterwards rather than it always being a before photo. Like I said, this podcast is really important to me and goes out to anyone that has lost their lives or lost someone important to such a horrific disease. It can be so catastrophic for everyone involved. So let's go all in together. If you want further discussions about eating disorder recovery, body positivity and learning to love your body, please head over to my Instagram at Smile to Health, where I discuss these in very lengthy captions that kind of feel like a snapshot of your diary. Well, that's what I'm aiming for anyway. And also, don't forget to rate, review and subscribe. And follow Jeans and a Nice Top pod too. Can't forget that one, can I? Ciao! Hey team, welcome to another episode of Jeans and a Nice Top. And this week we have the marvellous Georgina Mariee, aka at Georgina Mariee on Instagram. She is a yoga teacher, writer, nutritionist, and soon-to-be fitness coach. She's a lifelong friend that encompasses basically just a holistic, balanced, and truthful lifestyle based on love and just diving in. She's super creative. Her Instagram page feels like pages from your diary, and she just speaks to your soul and gives you a warm hug. But I'll stop waffling now and let her dive in and tell her a bit more about yourself, who you are and what you do for those that don't know you.
Okay, hello. So as you said, my name's Georgina. I am a yoga teacher based in North Yorkshire. I've taught yoga now for about like 5-6 years.
That's mental.
Until the pandemic. And yeah, I'm also a qualified nutritionist, and I have just qualified as a fitness coach, which is super exciting.
Amazing. I wasn't sure if you had or not, but that's so good. Congrats.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, no, I want to go into like more online coaching, especially with the world that we're currently in.
Yeah.
So that's super exciting. And I spend far too much time writing long captions and blog posts on social media because I really like to write. Yeah,
it's so cathartic, isn't it? I feel like it makes you feel so much better. It is like a diary. I think that's how it feels. It feels like you're really speaking your soul, but just on the internet rather than on a page.
Yeah, so like I remember when I was at uni and blogs were the thing, like pre-Instagram.
Yeah.
And I remember I had a little blog, like, you know, just my grandma read it, and I kept that up all the way through until I did my teacher training, actually. So when I went to Bali, and then when I got back from Bali and I had done my yoga teacher training, I kind of just stopped writing in the blog and started making my Instagram captions a lot longer. You know, previous to then, it was like the kind of like, you know, the really short captions people used to put where there was like oats with blueberries or like yoga.
It was all minimalist, isn't it? And it'd be like the prayer hands and then that pink flower emoji. Namaste.
Exactly.
Speaking of the lockdown especially, what I'm asking everyone at the moment is what you're currently watching and what you're currently reading, because I know that I still need recommendations. I'm mowing through books at the moment because it's my challenge for 2021. I'm trying to read 25 books whilst I'm 25. But I'm trying to mix it up and read stuff I wouldn't normally read. So definitely want your book recommendations. I don't know if you watch anything. If you don't, just give me something random or something that you used to watch.
So not the biggest television watcher. However, I'm saying this, Gareth is my fiance, which I We actually still
well, thanks for that deeper.
Even though we've been engaged almost a year, but like, yeah.
I guess because you got engaged in lockdown, you've not really been able to like share with everyone. That must feel so weird to say.
Oh my God, it feels very weird to say. But then, yeah, we thought that we haven't actually had to change our wedding. So we had arranged
it.
Yeah, for September this year.
Oh, amazing.
We were very kind of like, is it going to happen? And we still kind of are very cautious, but hopefully everything will be fine. What was I saying about? Oh yes, Gareth and I don't really watch very much television, but I kind of find watching an hour of telly before I go to bed quite relaxing. Like it's a really good amount of time to wind down. I'm quite an early night person, but I'm an early riser too. So we kind of watch anything that's like really easy to watch. So at the moment, like MasterChef is on, so we're just going through MasterChef.
I love MasterChef. I don't know what it is about it. I find, what's the presenter guy, the one with the glasses? I really like his voice.
Greg.
It might be Greg. Yeah, Greg, the bold one.
Yes.
Yeah, I really like Greg's voice and I don't know why, but I think that's one of the reasons why I like it.
Yeah, so we watched that. We watched Bake Off last night because they had Stand Up to Cancer Bake Off on last night. Real chill. And then I am currently reading, what's it called? I think it's called something about stars. Oh, that's going to really annoy me. The Giver of Stars. That's what it's called.
Oh, okay.
And it's by Jojo Moyes.
Yeah, so, I love her.
Yeah, so, and I've just got another book coming tomorrow, which is Self-Healers, and I can't remember the name of the author that's by, but I think she's called like Holistic Psychologist on Instagram.
Okay, that's always good. What's the basis of that book?
So that is a kind of about like doing the inner work, like as in if you've ever heard of like shadow work and inner child stuff. Yeah, that sort of thing. I try and alternate like fact and fiction books.
I do exactly the same thing because I feel if I read too much self-help, I start diagnosing myself with everything possible and I'm like, oh my goodness, this is too much self-help. I can't, like I need to escape. So yeah, I find that, but I also end up in a hole of getting so invested in fiction that I'm just turning pages. So it's nice to do a bit of both. Because I also have a productivity issue where I'm like, if I'm reading fiction, I don't think I'm being productive, which isn't the case.
Which is actually why I allow myself to do it, because I feel like we all have such a habit of being like, I must be productive all the time. Yeah. And so I've been really trying to break that. And I think the only way that we can break it is by like actively going against it. And so reading a book to me feels like a 100%. Rebellion against that part of me that's like, you must be productive in everything that you do.
Yeah, so. The bloody hustle culture that eats away at us. It's a nightmare. Mm-hmm. You should join in on my reading challenge. It's not a public challenge. I'm just doing it for myself. But
I don't know if anyone else has done like an English degree and can understand and relate to this. But when I did my degree, I had to read, and I finished my degree like 6 years ago. But
throwback.
You had to read like up to 3 novels a week, and that was before extra reading. It broke me, and I basically never read again.
But no, I totally relate because from a performing perspective, when I feel like when everyone graduates, it's so physical. Now I just want to sit for a second. I just want to sit down and just be, because like you do it all the time. So I can imagine, my friend did an English degree and she said she had the exact same issue and that she was like, I just couldn't look at a book after the 3 years. Did you do language or literature?
I did lit, but I did a few language modules along the way. It wasn't what I expected it to be. I'm not sure what I expected it to be, but it wasn't what I expected it to be.
It explains why you're such a good writer.
Well, thank you.
You're welcome. So speaking of throwbacks, me and G actually met in 2012, did we say? We've been Instagram friends for, gosh, almost a decade. That's mental, isn't it? Woo! And she's genuinely just like my soul sister online. I've seen her face and we've spoken many a time. We've just never had the blessing to meet in person yet, have we? Basically, the premise of how we got to know one another is that we both, I think, essentially started our accounts as like an accountability page, didn't we? I know that, I think probably when we met, that was definitely the point we were both in. And I think our journeys have paralleled in a lot of ways, but have also ebbed and flowed. And we've probably been there for one another when things have dipped or have become confusing. I know you definitely have been for me. And that's kind of what we want to talk about a bit today, is diving in deeper into specifically eating disorder recovery and the after bit. I feel like everyone talks about Like, we'll give you a basis on like where it all comes from and all of that stuff, but I think not many people really talk about the after bit and actually going all in and what long-term recovery is. And so I know that G talks a lot about going all in, and I'm obsessed with that phrase. It's like become my new term, because I think it's just the perfect embodiment of what it takes to go all in into yourself and actually look after yourself and make that commitment to yourself long term, not a short term fix or to tick a box or to a hit away or whatever. But to give people some basis, what was your diagnosis / classification initially? And just give us a brief history of where you were and where you now are.
Okay, so I actually don't think I've ever really spoken to anyone about maybe like this from start to finish. I've just never really put it together.
I think you always talk about fragments, don't you? But it's always like fragments of your journey along the way. So you'll be at one point in your life and then you'll be like, okay, this is where I am, and then this is where I am. But I think it can be quite healing to look back and see how far you've come.
Yeah, definitely. I agree with you. I was maybe 13, 14. And I think I just went through puberty before everyone else. I was very, very into fashion. Like actually went to, the reason I did English at uni was because I wanted to do fashion journalism. So I was very into like that world. I had
a subscription with, I was going to say you were obsessed with Elle magazine, right?
I had Elle magazine for like 15 years.
Wow.
I had so many. We ended up giving them to like a school. Anyway, I think they use them as like scrapbooks. But yeah, so I don't know. I didn't feel that I was as pretty as the girls in the magazines. I didn't feel like I looked like the girls in the magazines. But then like I didn't look like the girls in the magazines because that just wasn't my body type, and that is fine.
And you were also 13 and they're like in their 20s or they're 18, 19. So
yeah. Exactly. And so I decided that, and my sisters were all, so I'm a triplet, and I have a younger sister who's only 18 months younger than the rest of us. So we're all very similar in age. And I just went through puberty before they did, and it felt like I was being betrayed by my body in some way. You know, I couldn't control the fact that I was getting bigger than them, even though we all ate the same. We were all very, very active as like teenagers and kids.
Yeah.
So I just decided one Lent that I was going to eat a little bit more healthily, and I was going to stop having unhealthy snacks. And slowly I just started to, this snowball began. And I'm sure a lot of people can relate to this. You just pick off little bits and little bits and little bits.
Yeah, it like ricochets off one another. It starts off as the tiniest little thing. That's why I absolutely hate Lent. It makes me I have made it an adamant choice every year now that I don't give up something, I add something. So I bring in a healthy habit rather than adding something that actually isn't toxic. Like, everybody always gives up chocolate, and I'm like, why would you do that? Because chocolate is delicious and it makes you happy. Like, why would you give it up for 30 how many days? Don't do that to yourself. Like, the one year I was like, I'm going to give up coffee, and my friends were like, please don't, because you'll be a demon. And I was like, okay, maybe not. So then I thought, I'll add something in instead. So
no, I love that. I think that unfortunately, if anything, Lent to me always really shows me how far we still have to come. Like, sometimes I'm like, we've come so far with diet culture, like, go us. And then for Lent, everyone's like, I'm giving up bad foods. I'm like, oh my God, why? Yeah.
That term, I'm literally like, what is bad? Because, you know, if you've got a dairy allergy, cheese is bad. But for another person who isn't allergic to dairy and loves cheese on everything, cheese isn't bad because you enjoy it. It's like the same as for some people are really good at getting up early. Other people really struggle to get to bed, get up early because they have to work nights. Like, everything is so independent to the individual. The whole good foods, bad foods thing winds me up.
Oh yeah, I know. I feel like I could talk about that for ages.
Yeah.
So I just I spiraled down, and then eventually, you know, it got to the point where my mum was like, we're going to have to go to the doctors. I don't know whether any of us was really taking it very seriously. I don't know whether someone said to my mum, or maybe I should have asked her. It's because my sister came with me. So me, my sister, and my mum all went to the doctors together.
Oh, wow.
And I was sat on my sister's knee, and the doctor was like, yeah, she's got anorexia. And me and my sister were like, oh, that's so funny. And we were just like, no, that's not true.
Yeah.
And what's really sad is that my life has been defined by that moment for a very, 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 very long time. So then I started doing outpatient treatment, and I would go there once a week, and I would get weighed, and I had a food plan to follow. And I could talk about that for a long time, but it was very, I don't think they do things like that anymore. I'm not 100% sure, but from those I've spoken to.
Yeah, I went through a similar thing. I did inpatient and outpatient, and I know if a friend is going through it recently, they still do the food plan and the weighing. I like to believe they put more emphasis on the psychological help and actually understanding, because the biggest thing I find, and I didn't realise this until I actually had to start telling people, now that I look in inverted commas well, and you wouldn't be able to, in inverted commas, tell I have a problem. I find that when I explain to people that they don't, still to this day, people don't understand what an eating disorder is. There's so many different classifications. They just presume that you just have a problem with food and you don't eat. But actually, specifically with anorexia, which I also suffer from, it actually has nothing to do with the food. It's all about the control. And that is the premise of the pyramid. Like, that is the core center of everything. So even now, like when I feel stressed, it comes back to control, not necessarily with food now, but I might just be out trying to control some part of my life, whether it be that I get really strict with my routine, or I become obsessed with skincare, or like it can be the stupidest thing. Like I went through a really weird cleaning phase where I was like obsessed with cleaning everything because I just needed to control my space, because I didn't feel like I had control because of lockdown and things like that. So yeah, I think they're starting to make waves, but I still think there's way too much emphasis. Obviously they have to take care of the body and be like, you know, get you to a healthy weight, and that unfortunately is them ticking a box and being like, okay, they're at a healthy weight, we can move on because it's so oversubscribed. But yeah, I think they're making waves, but not quick enough, in my opinion.
Like, you know, there is a lot to be said for being a, as you said, inverted commas, healthy weight, and there's also a lot to be said for eating enough food, which is the point of the meal plan. I was Eating Disorder Awareness Week, as you'll know, last week. And I kind of took a lot of time to write some long.
I really enjoyed your post, actually.
Thank you. And blog posts about how I do think that those things do form a basis, because without those things from the studies that we have, like in the past, your obsession with food isn't going to go anywhere, and it's very difficult to heal and to move away from. Create a life outside of food in your body if you're still being, if the physiological like factors are literally just making you think about food, you know, being overweight, not eating enough. So I do think that's important, but as you said, the emphasis on it is that once you reach a certain weight, you're healed and you're fine. And that's not fair. And actually that was one of the biggest downfalls for me. Was at 18, you have to leave child mental health services, and actually they did let me stay on an extra year, so I left at 19, and they let me go, and I went to university, and I had no idea how to cook. I didn't know how to eat off of the meal plan that I had eaten every single day for the last 5 years. Literally, I'm not even exaggerating, to the brand every single. And going on holiday was just a nightmare. We used to have like a suitcase full of food, so I didn't throw a wobbler. Like, it's just like, I really feel for my parents.
Oh my God, me and my mum were laughing the other day because I was like, I was a little shit. I was vile. And I think the funniest thing is if anyone met either of us, we would be so bubbly and happy, the embodiment of yellow sunshine, do you know what I mean? Like, we're both so friendly and open, but I think the thing with that disorder is it makes you really demonic at times. I was vile, I was sassy, I was rude, and if it wasn't the way I wanted it, then shit hit the fan. There was no in between, so I totally relate to that. We were laughing the other day, my mum used to be like, some of the stuff you would come out with, she was like, I wanted to crawl into myself, because she was like, where is this coming from?
No, I know, I do think you have to really, gosh, sometimes I look back and I think about the things that I've, like, you know, even like relationships with people and the time that you miss, and you know, you wish you could go back, but I just think that you have to be kind to yourself, and you have to know that at the time you were doing the best that you could do, and I think that's all you can do. Like, you just have...
There's a really nice phrase with that someone said to me the other day, because I went through this really weird phase of mourning my past life, the time that I lost, because you do lose time, because you're living but you weren't fully living. We were living a fragmented part of life. and I was mourning it. Oh, I miss this. I want to go back and do it again and do it better and actually fully live, not live the way I was living. But someone said to me, you shouldn't be angry or upset with your past self because she didn't know any better.
Yeah.
And I think that's so beautiful, because it's like you were doing the best you could with all that you knew at the time.
Yes, like that Maya Angelou quote that's do better until you know better.
Yes, I think it was on the basis of that. I think someone had reshared that and there was a caption or something. I might have read it or someone said it to me, but yeah, I love that idea of it's so easy for us to look back and think that we've not done enough, but actually we just didn't know. Like, how could we do more because we didn't know? And that's part of the process.
Yeah, definitely. And that's why I tried to spend so much time, writing about it, is because when I was younger, there was no one else. For all of the flaws that I do think social media has, when I was younger and even when I was at university, even when we first met, I don't think you were the first person I had ever spoken to that had an eating disorder.
Oh my god, yeah.
I was the only person in my school, and it was like the weirdest thing in the world, and I literally got taken out of school, so I felt like I had branding on me. This is my problem. Mental health was not a thing. It was not discussed. It was a massive taboo, and this was only, like we said, back in 2012. It wasn't that long ago. There weren't the awareness tools that there are now. People didn't speak about it. Celebrities definitely didn't speak about it. There wasn't anything that you could go, oh, okay, I'm not alone. Someone else understands. And I think, yeah, I agree with you in the sense that was like, social media was actually a massive part of my healing process, in the sense that I had people that got it.
Yeah. Well, I mean, so that kind of brings us quite nicely to where I'm at in telling you about this.
Yeah. Oh, no, don't worry. I love a segue. It all makes sense.
I went to university, and the first year of uni was a complete nightmare. I don't like to talk too much about what happened, because I always am very afraid of like giving people tools of like disorder eating, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Let's just say it was a real bad time. The first year of university was a really bad time, so much so that when I got to my second year of university, I was diagnosed with osteoporosis. That was right at the start of my second year of uni, and that was the start of me making a change. And I, for the first time in my life, actively chose recovery. The rest of the time, I think it was a very forced thing, where I was kind of like doing it because it made my parents happy, or I was doing it because I, inverted commas, had to.
Yeah, and you wanted them to back off, so then again you had more control. You could go back to living the life the way you wanted to. I totally relate. It's so funny because you don't realise, like, yeah, I was doing it before, and you were like, oh, I really wasn't.
Again, like you said, like we were just literally just saying, like, do better. Well, you do your best until you know better. I think that's the same with recovery. Like, then you and I both jumped down the same extreme healthy eating. But for the first time in my life, I was eating food that wasn't from a package. So like, because, in packaged food, you can read the calories on the back. And so I'd only ever eaten packaged food. And then I came across a lot of Australian accounts. They seem to be a little bit ahead of us. And all this healthy eating and veganism and, I don't know, paleo and all these things. And
oh gosh,
all of a sudden I was like, wow, food can be like healthy and nourishment. And my mum and dad was so on board, because I think they saw this huge change in me, that I just was changing my life.
Yeah.
Or at least actually trying.
Yeah, and actively trying to challenge those behaviours and rituals and routines that had been so embedded in your way for so long.
Little did we know, we had the same. Both went down a somewhat negative spiral with healthy eating.
I went on some weird, I look back and I'm like, what?
You did like raw before.
Oh my god, yeah, I did the full-on raw vegan, where I would eat bowls of mangoes for a meal. That is not a meal. I laughed. Do you know what someone said to me the other day about like making porridge out of like bananas and apples? I was like, imagine somebody offered me that shit now. I'd be like, I want an actual bowl of oats, not some processed fruit that isn't going to fill me up and it's going to make my belly ache. I look at that girl and I'm like, you poor soul, you just needed something to hold on to. And the one good thing that whole weird movement did for me was that it got rid of my fear of eating in really large quantities.
Yeah.
So it healed me in that sense, in that I wasn't afraid to eat large portions of food, but it also did get me terrified of eating anything that wasn't XYZ.
So then came sort of like the next stage of healing. But I think that I always think the next part of my journey lasted a really long time. It was this kind of like quasi recovery state where you're walking probably up in the right direction, like imagining if recovery is the top of a mountain and you're walking up that mountain, but I was walking at like the slowest pace of all time ever. And it was just some slow going. Real slow going.
And I feel like it isn't linear either, is it? It's not, you're not walking straight up the mountain, so you're not going from A to B straight up. It's like you're walking around, having a little jolly, maybe sitting on the bench for a bit, going down because you actually saw something you really like the look of, or there was like a sheep or something, and then you go back up again and you're like, oh, this is nice. Oh, actually panic. No, let's run backwards again. It's that constant ebb and flow, back and forth process.
Definitely. So at the start of 2018, I reached out for help because I was in a dip. And I worked with, and I can give you all of her details so you can put things down below because I would highly recommend her.
100%. I think I know who you're going to say.
Nicola. Hobbs, and she like changed my life. Honestly, she just changed my life. But it was very me directed, so she never expected me to do anything that I wasn't ready for. Obviously she'd like give me gentle pushes. She supported me through a lot, and then I think we worked together for years, and then it was the start of last year, and one thing that she always talks about, and I know I've written about before, is that you can either peel the band-aid off or you can rip it off. And I was going for peel. I was really slowly peeling that band-aid off, but eventually you have to do that last little bit,
tear it off.
Exactly. And I think at the start of 2020 I was at this point when I was like, it's not really, I'm really managing, I'm fine, but there is still a very small part of me that is kind of keeping this low level control, and I just need to like stop living like this. And so at the start of 2020 I was like, maybe a couple of months into 2020, I was like, all right, here we go, I'm gonna do it. And I did, and here we are.
Here we are, smiling and thriving.
Exactly.
I love it.
It's really important, I think, for people to know that it isn't, because we always see the end product, right? We always see we don't see all of the behind the scenes, the chugging away, the back and forth, the dips, the highs, the lows. We see the final product. And then I know at one point in my journey, I was like, why can't I even be good at being recovered?
Yeah.
Like I literally fail at everything, and the one thing like I should be able to do is to be really good at recovering from the thing that I in my head had given myself. I think, and to have the power to lean and the confidence to lean on someone and work with someone consistently and build that trust as well. Nicola is incredible. I definitely will link her stuff. She's released quite a few books which I think are really beneficial, and she's doing quite a lot recently on the power of rest, which I'm just obsessed with because my new thing is definitely hustle culture. I've been dragged into that need. If you can't post about it or ticked it off, then it isn't success. And I'm definitely in that kind of bubble. So highly recommend. But I also had something similar I didn't work with Nicola, but I worked with a hypnotherapist that was my gorgeous friend Emma had worked with for her own things, totally separate to mine. And she was the first person who I felt like I was a human in a room having a conversation that wasn't weird or scary or not allowed, because I think, like we said before, it was a time when it was so taboo to say, oh, actually, you were so scared to say anything because you thought people would just react and things like that. And it's I think to build that rapport and to find that person you click with. I went through so many therapists and guidance counsellors. I remember this once, the NHS, I mean, bless them, they do incredible things, but their mental health sector isn't the best. And I got paired with this German man that wore socks and sandals, and I'll never forget it. And I was also very fashion conscious, and I remember going to my mum, does he really think I'm going to talk to him when he wears socks and sandals together? I was like, never, it's never going to happen. And I used to spend the whole session just insulting him about his socks and sandals because I just decided in my head we don't work. And actually what did work for me was the 60-year-old hippie that had really squishy cushions and used to make me herbal tea and just like chat to me about life, and we'd like paint coasters in our session. So I think for you guys listening, if you are looking out for help, I think don't be afraid to play the waters and to go out and find what works for you, because what will work for one person won't work for another. It's the same as fitness, it's the same as a sleep pattern, it's the same as a relationship. What one person likes, another person doesn't, and it is like a lifelong relationship, because I think they're such an integral part to healing.
I definitely felt the same. And you often hear people say, actually, with yoga teachers, that like, don't give up on yoga because you went to one class and you didn't click with the teacher.
100%.
Like, I also had a lot of different like counselors and therapists and coaches, a lot of them, and I didn't think that I would ever find someone that I clicked with. And eventually, and it took a long time, but eventually I did.
Person.
Yeah, but as you said, like, you have to be okay to keep trying, because sometimes you just want to give up and not try. And it's expensive. It is expensive as well.
Yeah, it is an investment, and in all senses.
But going more into yoga, I definitely want to talk about the power of that, because I feel like for both of us at different phases, yoga's really been that like healing foundation. Even now, I know that if I'm having a tough time, I know because I haven't been on my yoga mat, and I'm like, you're avoiding it, you need to get back on because you know it makes you face things, like stop avoiding it. And then I'll go back on and I'll have a little flow and a cry, and I'm like, oh, that's better.
Oh, good.
But tell us a bit about your yoga journey. Obviously you've progressed into being this wonderful yoga teacher that you are. I really love, you guys need to check out if you want to look at inversions and things like that. Handstands really scare me, and G has a really good thing where you break down all of the sections of the handstands and the drills and things to make sure that you get the mechanisms right, because I find a lot of the time with yoga it's literally just about a balance and the positioning, little things like looking down.
Yeah, well, I think my idea with that was to make sure that everyone felt like they could get upside down if they wanted to being the key word. Like, not everyone wants to do handstand, and that's totally fine, but I just wanted to be like, okay, well, if you want to give it a try, these are some really fun, helpful things that you can do. And as you said, it breaks it down into like 10-minute, I don't know what you want to call them, classes or chunks that you could stack together, or you could do one day at a time. So yeah, no, I did put that together a few weeks ago. But yeah, no, I started yoga. Actually tried yoga at uni, hated it. That was
so many people say this.
Yeah,
like tried it back in the day and they're like, ugh.
Well, so I was just, I didn't have the best relationship with movement, and I felt like, so I grew up a dancer, but like Irish dancing, so not a flexible dancer.
So cool though.
Unnecessarily weird. No, it's not really. It's
very upright and composed, isn't it?
If you Google Irish dancing, you'll understand. But I loved it. It was my life. It was my actual life. Yeah, no, definitely. Like my goal was to get to the World Championships. Like every single year was my goal. I went in the team, but didn't go individually, so kind of half got there.
You still did it. I mean, I am a dancer, but I definitely couldn't Irish dance.
That's because it's so bizarre.
The control you need for that, I just don't possess. I'm a noodle. I'm the opposite. I'm like Betty Spaghetti with my legs, so I have no.
Well, that's how I feel about my arms, because obviously in Irish dancing you don't move your arms. So I did it from 5 years old. Like,
oh wow.
5 until I was about 21. A long time.
Oh my goodness, so it really was your life.
Yeah, no, I wasn't kidding. So outside of dance, I ran, and I was big into running. And so when I went to university and I couldn't dance anymore, I would go back every now and then for the team practices and stuff, but I didn't really do much individual stuff by then. But I ran. And so when my friend Rosie was like, let's go to the gym and go and do yoga, I was like, let's go to the gym and do a run, let's not go do yoga. But I would go and run first, and then I would go to yoga afterwards. And I just thought it was so boring. I thought it was so unbelievably boring. And then which is crazy to me now, but then I went a few years later, I was told to try with a different counsellor that I was working with at the time. She was like, I think you should try yoga. And I was like, I really don't want to try yoga. I tried it before, I didn't love it. And she was like, just try it. So I tried yoga, and by chance, because I knew nothing about yoga, I knew nothing about the different styles of yoga, it was an Ashtanga class. So Ashtanga, for anyone that doesn't know, is quite intense. I feel like intense. Well, it can be quite intense, but it's quite fast.
Yeah.
And so I loved it. It felt like this mix of like dance and not really running, but the kind of the rhythm of yoga.
Yeah, the breath.
Exactly. So I felt
quite strict, isn't it?
Class, and I never stopped. I just never stopped. I then got hugely into yoga. My food Instagram was replaced with a yoga Instagram.
I loved it. It's my favourite transition you've ever made. And my favourite thing is when people all the time are so flexible, and I'm like, you have not seen the work this gal put in to make it happen. I can say that because I'm very lucky in that my hamstrings will always be flexible, but my hip flexors and my back is not. And because of that, I avoid anything that's a back bend, and I'm so stroppy with it. And so I'm now trying to do that, the backward grasp of the leg behind.
Oh, like a flipped grip.
Yeah, a flipped grip on dancer's pose, which is just so beyond me. Like a full wheel at times can be stiff. And I now all the time think about your like before and afters where you've shown, yes, I need to chip away.
I don't even have like photographs of the actual before, because I wasn't taking photographs when I first started.
Yeah.
And I remember there was a girl who I used to work with, and a part-time job that I had, and she used to be a cheerleader, and I remember her showing me this photograph of her doing dance with her leg behind her head, and she had the flipped grip. Yeah. And I remember thinking, oh, that's amazing, I wish I could do that. And I was like, well, that's stupid, I'm never going to be able to do that. And then you just work on it and you can do it.
Chip away.
I think that's the beautiful thing of yoga, is you chip away bit by bit, and then before you realise there's been this like beautiful journey and you've got to the pose, and it's that realisation that like each time you're grabbing a little bit further down or you're bending a bit more like forward, but it doesn't feel hard, it feels like a nice gradual unfolding. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the other thing that I love is that there isn't, I think that sounds kind of corny, but the literally the journey itself can teach us so much. It can teach us so much about practice and patience and discipline and consistency. And also when you get there, you realize it was just a pose and you didn't really find anything. And that itself is quite a lot, like, to be taught, you know.
Humbling as well, because I think
the thing that you thought that you really, really wanted, it's great when you get there, but actually, does it really give you the huge, big, life-changing experience that it would? Probably not.
No.
I have to remind myself, because I can't do any freestanding arm balances, and I really want to be able to handstand, and I'm like, you can't do yoga because you can't handstand. And I was like, that's ridiculous, because I know that I'll be able to handstand, and I'll just be like, okay, now I can handstand, and I just end up finding another thing to replace that thing to achieve. So it is the journey that's the bit that actually matters, not the end result.
Yeah, one thing I found really helpful in moving away from that was actually to stop posting my practice on Instagram. I think that we think that, like you said, like you get to this certain pose and you've achieved something in some way. And I don't know, I think that it's quite common with people and their bodies, as well as if you're not into yoga, you might find it with, well, when I get abs, people are, I'm going to have X, whether you think that that's like Instagram fame, or you think that if you're a trainer that you'll get more clients, or whatever it is that you think it will bring you. But then you get there and you realize it didn't bring you the thing that you thought it would after all. Yeah. And I found that the best way for me to move away from that perception, like, oh, the reason that I am not doing well as a yoga teacher is because I can't get my head to my toes, my toes to my head. And, well, all the other way around. But then you get there and you're like, well, I'm still, maybe if my toes could touch my shoulders, then I would have more,
It's never ending, is it? And actually what yoga, I know for me, the biggest reason it was like so healing for me is that it was the constant, like we said before, like the committing to the practice and the persistence. It was that committing to myself. Like I wasn't able to commit to myself in a beneficial or a positive way, and yoga was the first thing that enabled me to say, okay, if it's 20 minutes, if it's half an hour, if it's an hour, that's my time on the mat. And that was my like coming back home to myself, which I think gets lost in the Instagram yogis, where you need to be able to do all of these fancy poses, all these inversions, when actually it's just about you coming and showing up on the mat for yourself and just doing the practice because it makes you feel good.
Yeah, I mean, in many ways, it's kind of like what we were saying about reading a fiction book for joy. Because it's
heavens forbid we actually enjoy doing something that isn't productive.
It's like, I'm not doing this pose because I'm not warming up to do this pose. I'm not learning how to do a handstand because I think it's going to bring me this. I'm doing a yoga practice that's maybe very simple, maybe it's very complicated, because it makes me happy and it is self-care and it makes my mental health better and those sorts of things, versus it becoming something productive.
100%.
Would you say, because you've specialised in now like yoga, the fitness and the nutrition, do you think, coming from the background that you have, that it has changed your perspective as a trainer going in? Also taught yourself a lot about yourself? Yeah. That makes sense, doesn't it? You've learned a lot about yourself as well. That's what I was trying to say.
Yeah, I feel like as I move towards being a trainer, so I've actually weightlifted for as long as I have done yoga. So they've always meant quite a lot to me. But one of the things that I'm very conscious about as I move towards being a trainer is making sure that the sole reason that people want to train with me is not because they think that I'm going to provide them with the end result, this like body transformation.
Yeah.
Hopefully it's that they feel that I'm going to bring more joy to, or help them find more joy in their life.
Yeah.
And maybe enjoy training when they haven't enjoyed training. Maybe they'll get stronger along the way. Maybe they'll love their bodies. Maybe their bodies will change. Maybe their bodies won't change. I hope that they love their bodies in the process of doing all of these things, and that what I help them find is that along the way.
Yeah.
So versus
trying to chase the weight loss. I love that a lot, because I feel exercise and recovery can be quite a difficult thing, in the sense, I don't know about you, but I had to take a year out purely because I was 16 years old and I hadn't got my period. You know, I was at the risk of potentially not being able to have children later on in life, and it wasn't until somebody said that to me that, oh shit, this is actually in my power now. Like, I need, the same as you with the osteoporosis, that was the same thing for me, in that I was like, okay, I need to back down from this now and actually take myself and my health seriously. It's really weird, because it wasn't until I stepped completely away from exercise that, one, I realised how toxic my relationship was with it in the first place and the meaning behind it. The irony is, I used to run all the time, and I really don't like running. I hate it. I don't want to run for the bus. I just don't enjoy it. I don't like long forms of cardio. I hate it. I can dance for hours and hours and hours. You asked me to go for a run, get lost. But did I used to force myself to run all the time? I did. And it wasn't until I stepped away that I was exactly the same. I love lifting weights because I love feeling strong. I love dancing because I love the creativity of it. I love yoga because it gets me out of my brain. And I think sometimes in recovery, it's so important to step away from something, or like we've said, to go all in with something, to truly understand the relationship with it.
Oh, I completely agree. I also took a year of exercise, and reluctantly. Like, I will say, I don't want people. I also get that question quite a lot. Like, oh, do you think I can recover and do exercise? Well, it depends what your relationship with exercise is like. You have to be very honest with yourself. And if your relationship with exercise is almost like the same as your relationship with food, or you're using exercise for that purpose, then you have to be really honest with yourself, and you have to try your best to remove it from your life. I'm not saying it doesn't have to be quite so black or white. You know, it can be, I now can only, I might only go on walks, but I'm going to make sure that I'm going to be very strict with myself, and it's only going to be a half an hour walk, and it's not going to become, well, I can only go on walks, so now I'm going to walk for 3 hours. Like, it's not, do you know what I mean? Like, if that happens, you kind of take an inch and you go a mile. Like, that happens.
Yeah, literally.
So, so I took a year off of all of exercise, and I actually didn't run for 4 years.
Oh, wow. I didn't know that.
I believe it's quite common to run when you have issues around food. And it's also quite common for running to kind of bring back that mindset. So especially because of, I think it's worse if you have like trackers, watches, like apps that tell you how fast you're running, how many calories you've burned, how far you've gone, those sorts of things. So when I only brought running back in 2 years ago now. And I started very slowly, and I have very definite rules even now for myself that I will never run more than twice a week. I will never ever run more than 10k, and if I've run 10k, I probably will only run once a week, because I know myself. I also don't have any fitness tracking apps or watches, so when I say I run 10k, I think it's 10k, but like, that's just what my phone says.
It might not be.
It might not be, but it doesn't matter, because I'm not running for that reason.
For that purpose, you're not running for it to be tracked, for you to post it somewhere, for you to advertise it, or for it to dictate your worth. You're running because actually that was something that used to make you feel really good.
Yeah, exactly. And I think that sometimes you have to take a break from something to allow yourself the space to realize what your sort of like true intentions behind that thing were. And I don't know whether, had I never taken a break away from running, whether I would have ever been able to break that kind of connection between running and punishment, perhaps, maybe. That's, I do think a lot of those kind of behaviours that we do pick up along the way, it is a weird act of punishment, because I think obviously with a disorder it's really hard, because
you're not just losing weight, you're losing relationships, you're losing that emotional connection to yourself, but most importantly, you're losing the love for anything, and most importantly for yourself. And so I think we can't act from a place of love if we don't love ourselves, and that's a very difficult journey for anyone, whether you have a disorder or not. But I think, like you said, when you step away and you actually come back into things from a place of kindness and love rather than punishment and having to bully yourself into something, it completely changes the mindset behind the habit, and also makes you more likely to do something or less likely to do something for that reason. Like, I used to be so awful at taking rest days, and now I will happily take one because I'm allowed to. Like, I'm really tired, I've got a lot to do today, it's okay if I don't do a HIIT workout. I might go for a walk later, might not do anything at all, might just have a pajama day. Like, that's totally okay. And
sometimes you have to really prove to yourself that you can do the thing, and the only way to prove to yourself that you can do the thing is by doing the thing. So you can't think your way into having a day off and it's going to suddenly feel fine. You're probably going to feel a little bit like niggly, maybe a little bit anxious the whole day. But when you make it through, you almost like increase your resilience to making it through that again, or you've proven to yourself that nothing bad happened. And then you're more likely to be able to do it again. I think where we go wrong is we hope that we will get to a place where that will no longer feel uncomfortable, and then we'll be ready to do it. But actually, you're probably going to feel uncomfortable when you do it, but it's not, that shouldn't be the reason you don't.
That's so well put. Yeah, I think, like with anything, the fear of the discomfort is worse than actually the discomfort itself. I know that when I was really trying to go all in, I made a list of everything that scared me to do with my disorder, whether that was fear foods, habits that I did that I knew weren't healthy, and one by one I would tick them off. And I couldn't tick them off every day because some days I wouldn't be in a place where I could deal with that day, but I would tick them off. And eventually I actually found the list about a year and a bit ago, which was really weird. That's so strange. Like, I can't imagine that thing being a fear for me anymore, but it was so much of a fear that even the idea of the discomfort of sitting in it was too much.
But I agree with you. I think it's funny how that can happen. I think that when you're in the middle of it, you don't believe that you will ever get out of it. And I think you also don't believe, you know how you'll have friends and family, we all have friends and family who don't have issues around food or their bodies, you know.
I have to say though, they're few and far between. I don't know if you've noticed this since being in. I will never say that I am recovered because I think it's a constant learning process and I don't know what's going to pop up for me. But I am definitely at a point where very little things faze me anymore. Food does not dictate my life. My body doesn't dictate my life, and that's the most important thing. But I now notice how much it dictates everyone else's. And there's times when I'm actually like, I have a more normal relationship with food than you do, and you don't have a disorder. That's crazy that society is so warped, and diet culture and these awful messages are so embedded. Even to find someone that, inverted commas, doesn't have a problem with food is difficult now.
No, and I do agree with you. I just think that the difference in my experience is that it doesn't maybe dictate their lives in the same way.
Yes, of course.
For example, my sister won't mind me talking about this. One of my sisters sometimes has a little bit of an issue around food, but and you know, she doesn't always have the best relationship with her body, but it doesn't control her every waking thought. Whereas I think that when you have disordered eating, food is like this focal point of your day, and every single time you pass a mirror, you body check. I mean, maybe not everyone body checks, but I know a lot of people I've spoken with have that experience. But you're almost at your sole point of living is your next meal.
Yeah.
And like, food is on this pedestal, and it's all you think about, and you're constantly trying to control it in one way or the other. Whereas my sister, although she doesn't have the best relationship with her body and maybe not the best relationship with food at all times, she will still go out for wine and will have pizzas on weekend and have quite a free relationship with food. That maybe it could do with a little bit of she could just do with a little bit more self-love, you know?
A bit more kindness.
Not to poo-poo what she goes through at all.
No, that's so true. I think, that's an important thing I missed out, in the sense that, when you have an issue with food, in inverted commas, it is all consuming. It takes over everything. You don't have the energy to think about anything else. And I think that's what later down the line is really difficult to, because obviously different people have different triggers. Some people don't get triggered and like later down the line, some people aren't aware of what they are. But I feel like setting boundaries can be quite difficult when diet culture is so prevalent.
I definitely, and yeah, no, for sure. Like, things that are considered normal sometimes to some people might be quite damaging, and that can be or triggering, and that can be quite difficult.
What would you say were some of the key things that really changed when you went all in, and the things that really helped for you to actually rebuild that genuine relationship with yourself and actually be able to go, okay, that's not all consuming anymore. It's still there, but it doesn't take over, doesn't have the pep.
I think there was a lot of things. I was quite religiously tracking my calories. And actually, it wasn't even from a negative place, if I'm honest. It was in a way to try and eat more, not necessarily to eat less.
Yeah, it's so common that that's the case.
Yeah, because I was a very, very active yoga teacher, and I
you're so busy.
Eating enough calories when you are not used to eating enough calories can be quite difficult, and you don't even know what that looks like in a day. So at the time, like this time last year, I was very religiously tracking my calories, but I was still under eating. So I went to go and work with a nutritionist, and she was like, let's stop tracking calories. What some of the research suggests is that there's certain actions that can lead more towards disordered eating, and one of them is tracking intake.
Yeah.
And so I was at a point where I kind of knew what it looked like to eat enough, and she was like, right, you're ready, you can do this. And so I did. And so, but that also meant facing other things. You know, there's that uncertainty, like, oh, if I'm not eating this exact amount every single day, then who knows what's going to happen.
Yeah.
And also I work to tackle a lot of my food fears. So that's a very practical, more practical things. Get rid of everything that doesn't fit you. Like, if it's not going to fit you.
It was the best thing I ever did. I was holding on to items of clothing that I hadn't worn since I was 13, but I was obsessed with that concept of my body, that I was keeping them. And I was like, I'm now in a 20-something's body. I shouldn't be able to fit into my younger teen version self. Stop buying clothes in your old size. If the size bothers you, cut the size. I used to cut the size out of my clothes for years so that I never had to look at it, because it used to bother me if I wasn't in a certain number. I haven't weighed myself for a very long time. Yeah, I agree with the tracking. I deleted all of the apps. I actually couldn't tell you how many calories I eat in a day.
Yeah, which is great. And it's not for everybody. I do think there are certain points, like I think there's some research on binge eating that suggests that you need some sort of not necessarily to track, but sort of like a little bit more of like structure is helpful.
Yes, 100%.
And so I definitely did have some structure, as you said, to delete all that sort of thing. And then the other thing was, as we already said about yoga, was discipline. I had to stick to it. Like, even when it was uncomfortable, even when it felt awful, it was like, no, you've committed to this. And so I had little sticky notes to remind me, and we have a blackboard in our kitchen, and I wrote, I can't even remember what I wrote now, but it was something about not going around in circles anymore. That was that side of things, so like discipline. And then the other thing is about triggers. And it's one of the things that and it's such a mindset thing, but it has been very helpful to me. And that is, if you imagine yourself sat at a crossroads, so you come to a trigger, you see it, I don't know, okay, let's give an example. You see someone who is in a magazine or on your Instagram, and you're like, oh, I wish I looked like her. Okay, hi, trigger. You're at a crossroads. You could go down the road that you usually go down, and you could start restricting, or you could start to try and, inverted commas, fix yourself, whatever that looks like for you. Or you could go down the road that's going to be a little bit harder. You don't really know where it goes, but it doesn't go around in the circle anymore. It's going to be a little bit uncomfortable because no one likes to know. No one likes not knowing where they're going. You could go in that direction, and you could carry on down your own path. Blinkers on, down your own path, and that was the decision. I would just sit, and I would, whatever I was doing, and I'd imagine myself at these crossroads. What are you choosing? What are you deciding? Are you deciding to go back into your eating disorder and your disordered eating, or are you going to go down this new road? And you just have to choose a new road over and over and over again.
I love that concept of that it's a choice, and it's your choice to make, because I feel like so often is that it's subconscious. It becomes like this subconscious, you just go down that toxic road because it's just easier to, and you just kind of fall down, and it's not until you're like halfway down that road that you were even aware that you're there. And so I think to constantly check in, no, I don't have to automatically go into that road. I can pick another one that could be so much better. It's scary, but it could be so much better. And that conscious choice, I think, is so important, because I think a lot of the time, in the times of chaos, which ironically is the antithesis of control, isn't it? But they always come hand in hand. Yeah, I love the power of choice, and that we have to check in, and that it's not like you make this choice once and then you're fixed or it's done. It's constantly saying, no, you make this choice. And then it could be at multiple times of the day, it could be once a day, but you make that choice and it's yours to make.
Yeah, and you might slip up a little bit, and habit is a really, really strong thing. But the way that we begin to override habits is by forming new neural pathways, and we can only form them through repetition, and that will make the old ones become less powerful. And as you said, we are like more likely to go down those more negative but maybe more well built neural pathways when we are tired or stressed. And that's why sometimes it's really helpful to have more tangible things in place, whether that's little reminders around your house, and also like preventative measures, and that's where yoga comes in for me.
Same here.
And like often, like some people like meditation and that sort of thing, but and that's where I think for me self-care becomes very important, because you're trying to almost stop the tiredness and the stress that potentially will cause that habit
automatic going down the habit.
It's so funny, because I know that sleep and stress are ultimately the two biggest triggers for everything in my life, whether that be, I don't know about you, but I definitely suffer with insomnia. It's the worst thing ever. And the most annoying thing is the less I sleep, the more stressed I am, the less tolerant I am for things, the more I'm likely to slip back into old habits from doing that. And it's like a vicious cycle, and it's that conscious checking in. Okay, I didn't sleep last night, I'm going to go to bed at 9 even though I'm not tired, and just allow myself to fall asleep, because if I sleep better, I will wake up less stressed. I'm not going to go on my phone first thing in the morning because I know it stresses me out. Stop doing it, even if it's for 10 minutes. And it's that my easiest way to do things was to attach the new habit to a old habit I wanted to keep, but I knew I always had there. So the silly thing I did with like stop scrolling on my phone in the morning, which was my worst habit that made me feel like shite for so long, was I have coffee in the morning. I told myself I couldn't go on my phone until I made and drunk my coffee. And obviously I drink water first thing, I have a shower, I brush my teeth, so I'm doing other things in the morning before I even get to the coffee, which then meant, without knowing, my first hour of my day, I wasn't on my phone anymore. And that's because I attached it to an old habit that I quite liked and wasn't going to get rid of. And that helps a lot, I think. But yeah, the stress and sleep thing, it's a nightmare. It feeds in with everything. My skin is worse when I'm stressed and I don't sleep. My relationships are worse when I'm stressed and I don't sleep because I'm snappy and I'm bitey. Yeah, it's like I don't know where I was going with the stress and sleep thing, but the habit was definitely I know it helps with anyone that wants to build in new habits. If you attach it to a current habit that you like and you know is beneficial to you or that you enjoy having, that's a good way to get it in there without realizing. That's my cheat method, a cheat code. How would you say, if you were to give advice to someone now for recovery, what would it be? And I'm making that question really generalized, because I don't want it to be about a specific part of recovery, because I think everyone's journey is so different. But if you could tell somebody one thing, what would it be? That's quite a hard question, I know that.
I think that if anyone could just go to Nicola.
Do you know what, Han? Yeah, I've actually just ordered her new book. I'm really excited for it.
I think, I realise not everyone is able to work with somebody, but there are more affordable ways of doing it now, especially with people that you can find on social media. Like, and not everyone is as expensive as everyone else, and so Nicola was very affordable for me in comparison to a lot of the other options that there were.
And there's loads of charities now as well, like Beat, Mind. Those are just a couple that spring to mind for people. I'll put those in the notes as well for people to look up the links.
But I think believing that it's possible is a big one. Wanting it is a big one. So I think a lot of time we don't really want it. Yeah. Like, we say that we want it. We say, oh no, I do want to recover. But there's still this very big chunk of you that's kind of like, and I don't mean ready to recover. I mean, you actually want to recover. You're never going to feel ready to recover, so you have to have to go for it. Yeah. But I mean, like, you actually are wanting the life that is not, you don't want that life anymore.
Yeah.
Because then that's like the first little, that's the first.
It's like find your why, isn't it? Find your why and hold on to it. Weirdly enough, my why was that I didn't properly go all in until the concept that I've wanted to go to drama school my entire life. I did actually go in the end. Woo! But that was my why, because I realised that the way I wouldn't have been able to go because I was a health risk, and I didn't think about that. And it wasn't until actually the concept of everything I've worked for my entire life being taken away that actually I was like, okay, that's my why, and that was my constant purpose. And like, it doesn't have to be as something as specific as that, but yeah, I totally agree with having that wanting to recover and having a strong why that you can come back to when you blip.
I need people to believe that it is worth it, and that one day you will be sat with your family or with your friends, and you will only be caring about what you are doing with them and having a nice time with them, and you will not give two hoots about what you're having for your dinner or the food that's at that party. All you're going to care about is them. And I need you to believe it's possible, because I know what it feels like to believe that it's not.
I actually have a really funny story with that in the regards of us coming from our end, in that I feel like we very much are on the other side. When I went on my first date with my boyfriend, I can actually say that now. Wow. Feels weird, makes you feel ill. It's not as glorious as you with the fiance. I've not hit that yet, but boyfriend is a commitment I didn't think I'd be hitting anytime soon. And we'd gone to a coffee shop, and I was actually quite hungry, and I was like, I might get a brownie. And he was like, I could definitely smash a brownie. Literally, I'd never met him in person. And he was like, finally, a girl that just wants the brownie and eats it. And I scoffed, lol, because you have no idea. And then that was like a realization. Oh, I actually am that girl now. How freaking awesome does that feel? That I just, without thinking about it, I could really smash a brownie with my coffee. And then I just did, because I can. It wasn't until somebody that didn't know me at all, or my past or anything, pointed that out without realizing it, that I was like, oh shit. I told my mum, and she thought it was hilarious. Going off on that point of that, it is so worth it. From people that have been through it and through it again, and every angle and every orifice and back and forth we've walked up and down that mountain a million times. I think it is always worth it. Like, recovery is always worth it. Taking up and owning space is always worth it.
Yeah. And also, just as like another thing that I really want to mention is that I think sometimes when you've had an eating disorder for a really long time, you think that almost it doesn't matter anymore, especially if the people around you, sometimes when you've had it for a really long time, they get tired too. And so it's not necessarily they're brushing you to the side or that they don't care. They're just tired and they don't know what to say. But that doesn't mean that your disorder is worth any less. It doesn't mean that you are any less worthy of recovery.
Yeah.
Or that it's any less possible. Potentially it's harder because there's more habits kind of formed.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that it's not possible, and it doesn't mean that you're not worthy of carrying on trying.
Yeah, that's so important. And I think it's like you said, especially further down the line, the longer you're in that cycle, the easier it is for those around you to become more dismissive of it, because they're also immune to it. They're almost like, this is just who you are now. Yeah, you can always change, you can always push forward, and you can always choose yourself, I think is key. But to end on a bit of a positive, or just something slightly different, because this podcast is based on adulting and giving people just tips for the various chaoses that is trying to be an adult. What is one thing you wish you were taught in school? And it can literally be anything, like could be really ridiculous, quite funny.
Can I say yoga?
Oh yeah, of course you can.
Like, maybe I wouldn't have cared about it back then, but I really feel like I would have just been way more able to handle my emotions human being.
I know. Do you know what? I read something the other day that in India they do yoga every morning at schools. Like the kids have to do yoga as part of their day. And I was like, imagine if we did yoga instead of hockey and netball.
I used to teach yoga at high school.
Did you? I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Oh,
every Wednesday they used to have for their PE. I used to teach them yoga.
Oh, I love that. See, I would have actually done PE if it was that, 'cause I used to schedule my singing lessons in PE. So I think I did all of like 4 PE lessons for the whole of high school because I just never went.
Well, I did have those students that didn't want to do lacrosse.
Can you blame them? I was the worst. I so wasn't into PE at school. But I like that. I think yoga in schools and kids yoga is becoming a big thing now as well, isn't it?
Yeah, maybe I'll have to teach my nieces and nephews when they're a little older. They're only tiny.
Yeah. How old are they?
4, 2, and 9 months.
Oh,
They're going to be very cute bridesmaids and little page boys.
Oh my goodness.
And for our listeners today, give us all of your social handles, your blog, anything you've got up and coming, how they can book in with you from any of your multiple talents from yoga, nutrition, fitness. She's also an incredible artist, ladies and gentlemen.
Thank you.
If you don't know already.
Self-plug, this is your moment.
Okay, so my Instagram is Georgina_Mariee, spelt with 2 E's. It's a long story. I won't go down that rabbit hole. My website is georginamarie.com, but also nourishalways.com works too. They both go to the same thing. Nourish Always was my food Instagram back in the day, so that's why
that's what I knew you as.
Yeah. My YouTube, I think if you just YouTube Georgina Mariee, I come up. I'm not 100% sure, but it's just got some classes on there. I tend to upload a class a week. They're only about half an hour long. And then what else? If you're interested in online coaching, whether that's nutrition or personal training, there's like a little form on my website that you can fill out. And I think that's it.
Look at you. I like you like that's it, and it's like these million incredible things that you do. Thank you so much for coming on with me today. It's actually been really nice to just have a good natter.
Hasn't it?
I've missed your face so much.
I miss yours too.
Really excited for your wedding. Do you know where you want to go on a honeymoon?
Well, we wanted to go to Australia, but realistically that isn't happening. I know. So I think so Gareth and I love Cornwall. A lot.
I've never been, and I'm actually planning a stay. Well, I'd like to do a staycation, so I might actually hit you up for recommendations.
Because we love it. Also, we figured that actually it's going to save us an awful lot of money because obviously we're not going to have to pay for flights. So we're going to be saving a lot of money on that, and so we figured that it's great because we can spend all of our money on brunch.
Brilliant, which is the best time of day ever. I'm trying to convert my boy to brunch. He isn't convinced, because he's one of those people that likes to get up and eat breakfast as soon as he wakes up, and he's a bit grumpy if you push him back any later than like 11. So I was like, well, 11's quite like a nice brunch time, I think. So I need to, like, when everything opens up, I'm going to take him on like a brunch tour, I think.
He just needs to have 2, like Gareth's the same, but he just would have 2 breakfasts. I mean, to be honest, I'm the same. I'm not going to wait till 11 to have food, so I'll probably have a breakfast.
I'll see you soon, my lovely.
Yeah, I'll see you soon.
Good day.
Thank you.
Bye.